The allure of mermaids has captivated human imagination for millennia, with tales of these enchanting half-human, half-fish creatures appearing in folklore across numerous cultures. While many associate mermaids with Greek mythology or Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales, some interpretations link their origins to ancient religious texts, particularly the Book of Enoch. This apocryphal Jewish text contains fascinating narratives about fallen angels called Watchers, their offspring with human women, and divine punishment that connects to the creation of mermaids. Examining how this ancient text has been interpreted over centuries provides insight into the evolution of mythological creatures and how religious narratives blend with folklore. The Book of Enoch is an ancient Jewish religious text attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, though scholars date its composition to around the 3rd century BCE. This text was excluded from the canonical Hebrew Bible and most Christian canons, though it remained significant in Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. The book contains revelations about heaven and earth, including detailed accounts of fallen angels, their rebellion against God, and the consequences of their actions. These narratives provide the foundation for interpretations connecting the text to mermaid mythology. The Book of Enoch's vivid descriptions of supernatural beings and divine punishment created fertile ground for mythological developments. Central to the Book of Enoch is the story of the Watchers, a group of 200 angels led by Samyaza who descended to earth, captivated by the beauty of human women. These Watchers abandoned their heavenly duties and took human wives, teaching humanity forbidden knowledge including astrology, weaponry, cosmetics, and various forms of magic. Their transgressions represented a fundamental violation of the divine order as they crossed boundaries between the celestial and earthly realms. The Watchers' actions were viewed as corruption of humanity, introducing knowledge and practices that God had not intended humans to possess. Their decision to intermingle with humans set in motion a chain of events that would lead to catastrophic consequences. The union between the Watchers and human women produced offspring known as the Nephilim, described as giants with extraordinary strength and appetites. According to the Book of Enoch, these hybrid beings consumed vast resources, eventually turning against humanity and devouring people when other food sources were depleted. The Nephilim's violence and corruption spread across the earth, creating chaos and suffering that grieved God. Their existence represented a fundamental distortion of the created order, as they were neither fully human nor fully angelic. The text portrays these beings as monstrous and destructive, ultimately contributing to God's decision to cleanse the earth through the Great Flood. Within the Book of Enoch traditions, the concept of a Siren curse emerged as divine punishment for some of the women who consorted with the Watchers. According to these accounts, God condemned these women to a partially aquatic existence, transforming their lower bodies into fishtails while maintaining their human upper halves. This punishment served as a perpetual reminder of their transgression against the natural order. These cursed women were said to be doomed to lure sailors to their deaths, unable to fully return to land or to find peace in the depths. This narrative connection between fallen angels, forbidden unions, and aquatic transformation provided a religious explanation for mermaid myths that emerged in folklore. The malevolent behavior of mermaids, as depicted in accounts connected to the Book of Enoch, included deliberately causing shipwrecks through their enchanting songs and appearances. These sirens would position themselves on rocky outcroppings during storms, singing with supernaturally beautiful voices that carried over the howling winds and crashing waves to bewitch sailors. Ship captains and crew, entranced by their melodies and glimpses of their beautiful forms, would steer their vessels toward the treacherous rocks, resulting in devastating wrecks. The mermaids would then swim among the debris, collecting valuable items, and sometimes dragging still living sailors down to watery graves in underwater caves, where they were said to collect human souls. Their actions were portrayed as calculated and merciless, reflecting the bitterness and vengeance these former lovers of angels harbored toward humanity. Another disturbing behavior attributed to these Enochian mermaids was their practice of seducing fishermen and coastal villagers. According to these tales, mermaids would sometimes approach solitary men on beaches or secluded coves, appearing as extraordinarily beautiful women in need of assistance. Once they gained the trust of their victims, they would reveal their true nature and drag them beneath the waves to drown them. In some versions, the mermaids were said to keep these men alive in air pockets within underwater grottos, forcing them to father half-human children who would eventually be released to infiltrate coastal communities. These offspring were believed to possess uncanny abilities to predict storms and control weather, but also inherited their mother's malevolence toward pure humans. Coastal villages developed elaborate rituals and protective charms to identify and ward off these mermaid-human hybrids, who were thought to bring misfortune and death. Perhaps most disturbing were accounts of mermaids targeting children playing near shorelines. These stories claimed that mermaids held particular hatred for human mothers, as they represented what the cursed women had lost in their transformation. Mermaids would allegedly approach children with offers of beautiful shells, pearls, or promises of underwater treasures, luring them into deeper waters. Once captured, these children were said to be transformed through dark magic into servile creatures, neither fully human nor fully fish, forced to collect souls for their mermaid mistresses. In some traditions, the eerie sounds of waves slapping against hulls on quiet nights were believed to be the weeping of these captured children, warning others to stay away from the water's edge. These tales served as cautionary stories for coastal communities, teaching children to fear the water and respect its dangers, while reinforcing the narrative that mermaids were not benevolent creatures but vengeful beings cursed by God for their transgressions. Maritime folklore across numerous cultures features mermaid-like beings, though their characteristics vary widely. Greek mythology speaks of sirens who lured sailors with enchanting songs, while Norse legends tell of beautiful but dangerous sea maidens. In Middle Eastern traditions, water spirits called jinn sometimes took forms resembling mermaids. These diverse traditions suggest that the concept of aquatic humanoids emerged across cultures, likely inspired by similar psychological responses to the mysterious and dangerous nature of the sea. The interpretation of the Book of Enoch regarding mermaids represents an attempt to provide these widespread myths with a unified religious origin that connects to ancient biblical narratives. The evolution of mermaid mythology over time demonstrates how religious narratives blend with folklore to create new traditions. Early mermaid-like beings in ancient mythology were often dangerous creatures who brought misfortune. But by the medieval period, mermaids began appearing in European church carvings as symbols of vanity and temptation. During the Renaissance, mermaids became more romanticized, sometimes representing the dual nature of humanity, part divine, upper body, and part animal, lower body. The Victorian era saw further softening of the mermaid image, culminating in Andersen's tragic Little Mermaid, who yearned for a human soul. Throughout these transformations, religious elements were often incorporated to explain their origins and nature, with the Book of Enoch interpretation being an important addition to this evolving mythological landscape. Interpretations connecting mermaids to the Book of Enoch reflect how ancient religious texts inform folklore traditions. These connections represent a fascinating example of how myths evolve through cultural exchange and religious syncretism. The narrative has gained traction in some circles, particularly among those interested in alternative religious histories or supernatural phenomena. This interpretation demonstrates how ancient texts remain living documents that continue to inspire mythological connections, even millennia after their composition. The appeal of linking mermaids to the Book of Enoch lies partly in the human desire to find cohesive explanations for similar myths across cultures. By connecting mermaids to the biblical narrative of fallen angels and divine punishment, these interpretations provide a unifying framework for understanding diverse folkloric traditions. This approach satisfies the human inclination to seek patterns and connections in mythological systems. The Mermaid-Enoch connection also adds moral dimensions to mermaid mythology, transforming these creatures from simple maritime fantasies into symbols of cosmic transgression and divine justice. This moralization of mythology reflects the enduring influence of religious frameworks on how cultures understand and interpret the supernatural. In conclusion, the Book of Enoch's vivid accounts of fallen angels, forbidden unions, and divine punishment have provided fertile ground for mythological elaborations regarding mermaids. The narrative of the Watchers and their offspring has been expanded to include the transformation of women into aquatic beings as a form of divine retribution. This evolution demonstrates how religious texts and folklore traditions continuously influence each other, creating mythological narratives that address fundamental human questions about the supernatural world. The persistence of mermaid mythology across cultures and throughout history speaks to the enduring human fascination with the boundaries between human and non-human, natural and supernatural, divine and monstrous, themes that the Book of Enoch explores and that continue to resonate in its interpretations.